My friends, good day. I'm starting this video with a quote from the Gospel. According to Ivan, only the act of redemption will be counted, not repentance, because villains sometimes repent. In fact, it comes straight from the book by Alexander Zinoviev, The Yawning Heights, a book that makes no sense, that is completely nonsensical. It was actually written to make no sense because it illustrates life in the Soviet Union. I recommend this book to you because it helps to oil your brain and will break all your usual logical connections. So I came here today to talk about an issue. You've known me for a long time since we've been seeing each other. I have a bit of a spiritual side. I'm a little, a bit into sophism, a bit into esotericism, all that. But at the same time, I still have a side that's firmly rooted in maybe a certain form. I almost want to say nihilism. There are a lot of people who write to me to thank me, saying, Aldosterone, you give a lot in your videos. I've followed you for years, and you always give. Sometimes I come to give too, but I'll admit I also come to take. When you want to help people, you relieve them. That's what needs to be done. You have to take from them. You have to take things they're carrying. And when those things are gone, right? And they'll feel lighter. So my goal most of the time is not to add things, it's not to give. On the contrary, it's to take away, like in the case of this video. So today, I'd like to talk to you. I'd like to talk to you about a situation that happens to a lot of people and which is probably the ultimate illustration of the human condition. Let me tell you, maybe I'll take an example. Yeah, I'll take an example. There's an Algerian singer. She's no longer with us. She died a long time ago. Her name is Cheikha Djenia, okay? Cheikha Djenia. And actually, she always liked it when her name was mentioned to say Kabir el-Haqqaniya bin Saida, which means the authentic daughter of Saida. It's one of the cities in the west, in Western Algeria, you see? So I was telling you that this woman, like many singers of her background, she performed at weddings, she did events, all that. And then she traveled across the country and she met a lot of people and she listened. These were people who were attentive, they were close to people, they were close to society, and they were the keepers of many stories that sometimes would influence their writings. And she goes into one of those songs, a pretty sad song, like most of the time. His world was sometimes a dark world, even sometimes under joyful appearances. And actually, it's about a situation where she's at a marabout's place. She goes to see a marabout. And actually, the marabout is writing. So the marabout, you pay him, and he's going to write you a talisman. So he writes it in front of you, and you pay him. For this work, marabouts normally, just to maybe respect the story and its authenticity, generally don't have a fixed price. Unlike a restaurant, you pay what you can, if you can. Usually you visit their place, request something, and they help you with words, a talisman, herbs, or something similar. And generally, these are not for the majority. I'm talking about the most traditional ones. These people won't ask for a specific amount of money. Sometimes people pay by placing money on the cushion where they're sitting, then leaving. He doesn't know how much the last client or the last patient, if you will, paid. And so I was saying that in her song, she says that she's there and the marabout is writing and that she pays him. And in reality, she lost her faith. That means she realizes her confusion at that moment because she doesn't believe in the marabout at all. At this stage, she's a little bit like some people. There's this pattern that we're going to find. For example, if you read The Grapes of Wrath by Steinbeck, which I highly recommend, it's very interesting. It's a big, thick book, but very dense, a story that's actually quite easy to read. Steinbeck isn't exactly Hegel, It's an easy read and you get into the story very quickly. And in this book, he tells this story. It's about people who are thrown onto the road, who are in a caravan. That's kind of the story of the book. The economic collapse in the United States forces many people onto the road, carrying all their belongings in a truck or caravan. It doesn't matter, just try to leave. And then on the road, well, they'll pick up a few people in the same situation and they'll travel together, and they find a priest, a man of the church, who was lying down, if I remember correctly. He was lying under a tree. And actually, this man, he has a problem. He served a long time in the church, and one day, and he lost his faith. You see, he lost everything. In this book, Steinbeck shows people who have lost everything and have nothing left. They lost their jobs, homes, and income. You even go as far as the guy who lost his faith, you see. Now he's troubled, with nowhere to go, stuck under a tree. He doesn't want to return to church and lie. He doesn't want to go back to church and keep officiating, talking, pretending like nothing happened. He's in crisis, spiritual identity and human. You see, he's completely lost. And they're going to take him with them on this journey. And so this pattern I'm talking about comes up very often in literature, in cinema. You'll also find it in Nietzsche's Thus Spoke Zarathustra, a very interesting book to read as well. Even if you realize when reading that sometimes entire sections, up to 80 pages, appear in a row, which it's not a question of interpretation or reading complexity. You realize that it doesn't mean anything at all. It doesn't mean anything. The guy, he was in Sils Maria, I think it was Sils Maria in Switzerland, in the mountains, a beautiful place. But he had pretty much lost his mind at times. I'm not sure what substance he used, definitely alcohol. But even Karl Marx was a functional alcoholic. And the Communist Party manifesto, he wrote it pretty much under the influence of alcohol. Even though it's a text that is probably, maybe we should read it together someday. It's one of the most influential texts in history, in the history of these last 2 centuries, somewhere. But let's maybe go back to our Cheikha, isn't it, in Algeria, where she is. And the Marabout is writing, and while he is writing, she is looking at her situation. What does she say in her song? Exactly, she says, look at when I got lost. Look at how I'm not all there anymore, somewhere. A marabout writes, and I pay him, look at how lost I am. Okay, so she's making people witness this. How? Maybe because of life's difficulties, these ups and downs. Maybe also because of being lost, sometimes emotional pain. She finds herself doing something, and at some point she wakes up. She doesn't wake up in that moment by faith. No, she had never had it maybe, but now it's as if suddenly she disconnects from that. Reality, she moves away from it. She sees herself, she sees this charlatan. I feel like saying, who's writing this talisman that is worth nothing at all, that won't change her life, that won't do anything. And she pays for it. She is co-responsible exactly for this big scam. We pay for it. She says, look when I'm lost. And actually, this condition, which is terrible, it is literally Nietzschean. God is dead, we've killed him, that's it. And the blasphemers, before, blasphemy was the most serious crime there was, but after, the blasphemers ceased to exist. When God himself is dead, you see. And actually, the problem in all this is it's this vision. About that, I was telling you about human conditions where the person sees themselves. The person realizes that they are doing something wrong. The person realizes that they are lost. But they can't help it. They keep going anyway. You see, that's what's terrible. You know, sometimes people say that ignorance is they say in English, it's a blessing, ignorance is a blessing. Imagine something, maybe something funny or not really funny, but you know what I mean. A man suspects his wife or partner is cheating on him, and the whole world knows, the neighbors know, everyone knows, but he doesn't know. And so he's there, he's happy, he comes home one night, he's counting on his wife's loyalty, without realizing that at the moment he opened the door, well, there was a handsome guy who jumped off the balcony, probably at the very same minute. And everyone knows it, but he doesn't know. But because he doesn't know, he lives without considering this reality. in his mental framework. And so he's happy, he's calm and all that. And maybe sometimes people feel bad for him, people feel bad in his place, but he's fine and far removed from it all. That's a condition, that's a state. But there's another one that's much worse. It's when, for example, a man knows his wife is cheating on him, but he can't act. He can't turn back, walk away, or leave her, and he suffers. It's not a choice. He doesn't think it's right, but he can't do anything. He also views himself externally, and he knows it's toxic, and he knows it's not right, and he knows it shapes, it causes pain, sleepless nights, tears, all of that. But at the same time, he's stuck in a system. That's terrible. I'm telling you, ignorance can be a blessing. Sometimes it really is. The other day, a year or two ago, I was reading the tragic story of a doctor, a general practitioner, who was in the hospital himself, sick, right? And at one point, he looks at his medical file. And when he looks at his medical file, he collapses. Because the x-ray that's there, the text accompanying the x-ray, you know, the radiologist's analysis and so on, which for the average person doesn't mean anything. They're words, they're complicated words, technical medical terms. You almost have to Google every word to make it make sense. He counts and noticed that. He broke down because what he had just seen was a death sentence. You see, so knowing, you see, he knows, but that knowledge becomes a curse. You see, it's like I was telling you at the beginning of the video. You shouldn't think that all the we associate concepts or sensations or a taste, if you want, an atmosphere, sometimes even a positive or negative one, to certain things, and then we've never actually discussed them, right? We've never discussed them. It's like at the beginning of the video, I told you I'm here to take, not to give, right? It's very important sometimes because we consider giving to be positive and taking to be negative, but that's not true. Most of the time, you can actually help a person much more by taking from them than by giving to them, you see? That's why I suggested you read Alexander Zinoviev's The Yawning Heights, since the entire book is written like that. It's a big book. It's the size of a shoebox, isn't it, depending on the edition. I have a Swiss edition, possibly published in Switzerland, maybe the first and last time. And it's practically in every sentence, you're going to go into something that will challenge your usual sense, your usual way of thinking. And I was saying that still in this same continuity, we assume that knowledge or light, isn't it, is a good thing. In the case of this doctor, it was a curse, right? Because I read a news article that quoted his wife, and the doctor, he died shortly after. And that caused this understanding caused psychological distress in him. So I was saying that knowledge or light, if we're going to use the word light from now on to mean knowledge, is not always a blessing, isn't it? Sometimes, like in the case of this doctor, it revealed to him a final terminal situation that those around him were hiding from him, but he was able to access it. Then came a moment when this knowledge was useless to him. This knowledge could only show him that he was now facing his own mortality without perhaps having been properly prepared. You see, let's continue our story, our path of reflection in this video. Actually, if you look, there are conditions where we know, and if we know, it's good to know. We might even be over-informed these days. We're bombarded with information. Really compare us today, our experiences, compare them to our grandparents. What do you think? What do you think? In terms of the amount of information, you know, I think even if I can't easily prove it, but maybe in an empirical way, I think I absorb, and it's probably the same for you, I absorb in 1 year more information than my great-grandparents did in an entire lifetime. I think what I just said is true. To negotiate, maybe 18 months, maybe 6 months, I don't know. But we understood each other. But are we more enlightened or illuminated? Not necessarily. What's important, and that's how I started the video with the quote from Zinoviev: "It's the actions, only acts of repentance will count." See what I mean? The act. We have a lot of words, we have a lot of knowledge, we have a lot of enlightenment, but it's just enlightenment. I feel like, those lamps, the lamps. Back when I was a child, we had tungsten lamps, filament lamps, very strong light, warm light. Even if you touched that lamp, you could get burned, really. And later on, we replaced them with halogen lamps and stuff, and all kinds of low consumption technologies we have now, which are cool when you touch them. Actually, it's a light that doesn't get hot. Whereas the tungsten lamp gave off quite a bit of infrared, it could get hot, right? Well, the light from the void, it's cold. The void is cold. You can touch it. Even when it's been on for hours, there's nothing, it's not hot. Today we have plenty of light, but it doesn't truly illuminate. So what do we really have? It's not a light that warms either. So it might shed light on a situation, but we just stay like this, going around in circles and doing nothing. And that's what's terrible, that so many people are in this situation. They're off, how should I put it? I'll maybe give you another example of a song, an old song by Cheikha. It might not necessarily have been by him. At first, he sang songs that were part of the tradition, local folklore. And actually, he's talking about a woman. He says, I'll translate for you in a second. He says, he's talking about a woman, and he says, the woman who leaves you without a reason, and how are you going to bring her back? You see what I mean? She leaves for no reason. That's what's most terrible. Because when the woman or the partner or the loved one, as the Marabouts say, leaves and leaves for a reason you can articulate, that you can define. Yes, that's it. He left because we argued over. That's it. A money issue or a story about, I don't know, or the mother-in-law or whatever. At least we have a basis to solve the situation. You see, we start there. We have a basis. If she leaves for no reason, just like that, how will you bring her back? Where will you begin? See what I mean? That's terrible. There are terrible situations like that. And one of the terrible situations, it's when a person is involved in a situation. So it can be any kind of situation. I mentioned the man who's being cheated on by his wife but can't leave her, so he suffers. It can be the woman in toxic situations. I've seen women. The girl, she was beaten and all that. She was hurt. She gets to the hospital. She lies. She says she fell. She says something else. She doesn't want to press charges. Even when the neighbors call the police, sometimes it escalates. And the neighbors call the police and people have hope for her. They say yes. Yeah, maybe this time she'll get rid of him with the cops, with everyone. Maybe this time she'll find the courage to move forward, but no, not at all. What she'll do is she'll refuse to press charges. She'll think about her wounds, then she'll go back to him, hoping that this time he'll become better. How do you help someone like that? It's not simple or obvious, especially since, let me add, talking to her is what's terrible, now more than ever. Today, it's even a marker, I would say, of our time, because the problem is, look, maybe I'll give you another example from everyday life much later on. My neighbor has a tire that's completely bald, like a Formula One car. You can even see the metal, even metal wires are visible. That tire is a danger, At some point, it's going to blow out, and then, well, it could cause him some trouble. But if he doesn't know and you tell him about the tire, he says, oh, wow, thanks for telling me. I didn't know, I hadn't seen it. At that moment, you point it out and show him, as Saint-Exupéry said, a path to a well, and he'll go. But here's the problem. If he says to you, yes, I know, and a month later, he's still driving it, that's the problem of our time. That's the marker. And if I go back to Saint-Exupéry, when he was observing, he was in his plane, the planes. A lot of people want to become pilots, but what they don't realize, as Nietzsche said, is that God is dead. Well, no, he doesn't realize something else. He doesn't realize that it has a slightly boring side. There are some cool moments, takeoff, the engines roaring, landing, turbulence and wind. Some cool moments, you see. But most of the time, sometimes it's hours and hours between two navigation points. There can be hours where nothing happens. And actually, when you read Saint-Exupéry's books, you realize that you're a pilot, because at times you feel that he was really bored. But he took advantage of this time. He took advantage of this time of solitude in quotes, in the cockpit, to develop a vision of life, of philosophy. An approach that is very interesting. I don't necessarily defend it, but it's an approach that has its merits. And precisely when he was looking at one of his books, I don't remember which one. I've read them all, but I don't remember the exact title. Wind, Sun, and Stars. Not sure which one. It all gets mixed up in my memory. And actually, I was saying he's flying in a plane, in a propeller plane. It didn't go very high back then, did it? And so he's flying over a desert and he sees a Bedouin. Well, the desert is flat as a pancake. If there's a Bedouin in the desert, you'll see him, that's for sure. You can't miss him. If you're flying at 1,000 meters to stay under the clouds and all, you can see him. And so he sees this guy and he says, what should I do? How can I save this person? Because he imagines that he wants to save him, that's it. Save, not in the physical sense of the word. We understand each other. And he says, I have to teach him thirst. And him and show him a path to a well, or show him a way to a well. That means we keep it. There are two situations. There's the situation of this person described by Saint-Exupéry. And how are you going to make him drink? When he doesn't want to drink, you see? You need to do two things. Teach him thirst and tell him he's thirsty. He's going to ask you what it means to be thirsty, so you're going to explain to him what thirst is. Once he understands that he's thirsty, that means once he understands that he's missing things. It could be material comfort, it could be things, intellectual baggage. It doesn't matter what Saint-Exupéry meant by that. Because still, the guy in the desert, maybe he was living in completeness. He didn't need anything, right? From Saint-Exupéry's perspective, he needed something. So what are we going to do? Are we going to teach him thirst and then convince him that he's thirsty? And then once we get to that point, we'll draw him a path to a well. We'll show him how he should go to a well. You see what I mean? Is it necessary to do that? Does it make sense to do all that? Isn't it worth it? Isn't it better? Isn't it better to let him stay in his ignorance? I say that in quotes. We don't have the right, do we, to call others ignorant just like that. It's a label, it's a stigmatizing label, but in reality, it's not stigmatizing at all. We're all ignorant. You realize what we all know if we look at what we know, even those who supposedly know a lot compared to the rest of humanity. What we don't know, and infinitely vaster than what we know, right? So we're all dealing with just a droplet of knowledge. That's why this video exists. It's because we have this obligation to share. We share, and the goal is not to convince people or convert them to anything, but just to share. And then also invite others to share, invite sharing in the hope that something positive will come from it. As I was saying, the problem today, if I go back a bit, when I discussed Saint-Exupéry, that's the issue. Today, when we want to help others, we talk to people who know. They know what we should and are telling them. It's not the guy who says, wow, thanks for letting me know my tire was about to burst. I'll go replace it right away. It's not that. We have people who know everything you could tell them. They're overinformed because they're bombarded with information, because they have more information than their grandparents had in a lifetime. They get it in 6 months, in a year, in 18 months, you see. And so at that point, when you go to talk to them, well, you're not going to help them with words. Why? Because what you're telling them, they already know. That's it, what you're telling them. If someone is in a toxic relationship, talk to them. Yes, she knows everything and has already thought about it. So we've reached a point where rationality won't work anymore. Why are you going to bring her something rational? I'll say rational ideas. She's sleepless and her mind is spinning. Then you enter her life and throw something rational at her. Well, that's good, I guess. Thanks, but what will that do for the schmilblick? Well, it won't help at all. So there's something I'd like to tell you. I wonder sometimes because, today we have, because of maybe there's too much information, not enough action. Why? Not because we're passive about information, so we consume information, but we're passive, we don't act. Remember, only your actions will be counted, right? Not your words. Words won't be counted because, simply put, action is what will make the difference between you and someone else. Let me tell you, maybe I'm rambling, but there's a point. I'm not lost. I'm telling you something. Look, is there a difference between someone who doesn't read, who knows how to read, who can read but chooses not to read, who doesn't want to read, and someone who can't read because they don't have a choice? He can't read because he never learned and now believes it's too late, even though it's not. But both are in exactly the same position, you see. So being informed, knowing without acting, without using your knowledge to guide your life, to solve your problems. It's that we're confusing intellectualism with wisdom because wisdom involves knowledge. But it also involves using that knowledge to guide your life. Otherwise, if you have a lot of knowledge, but your life is led very poorly and you can't apply it to your life, what are you actually doing? We're just being intellectuals. We're just stacking up knowledge in order. We're just mixing it, mixing it. And when the dough gets too thick, we just add more knowledge to it. And we keep stirring the pot and we wear ourselves out. The pot gets heavier and heavier. The dough is thick and everything. But in the end, it's not going to change our lives, you see. So what we have today is, with this spiritual emptiness that is experienced by humanity. So through the Zarathustra and others, you will see the beginning, right? You will feel the beginning of the collapse, the beginning of the collapse. By the way, at the beginning, in the prologue, he says something like, he talks about a man, he talks about an old man, and this old man, well, he goes out into nature and he starts to contemplate creation, and he starts to listen to the sounds of the birds and get closer to the authentic things in life. And he says that's where his collapse began. You see what I mean? It's that we're projected into the Nietzschean nihilistic dimension. That's where we're extended. We're in it. And so what we're going to do is have this mentality of getting closer. I don't know. There's the return of certain practices. You see, for example, Kabbalah, there are similarities today. Fundamental Kabbalah, Kabbalah for everyone, literally Kabbalah for dummies, or things like that. Or sometimes even Zen or Tao, or philosophies, or Indian or Southeast Asian religions or others. Well, you'll see that people start to embrace that, searching for a dimension, searching for a light. The more they move toward the light, the more they run into lights that lead to nothingness. It lights up, but it's cold. It doesn't bring you any warmth. You become the crazy insect of Patricia Cass, going into the light. Very beautiful song. She has a slow one, Going Into the Light. Then you become like an insect circling and hitting the light repeatedly. So I was saying that we have this issue, that we are in a situation. I almost want to call it anti-Kabbalistic or counter-Kabbalistic. Why? Because Kabbalah is based on the fact that at its core, it's a simple thing. It's that it's not enough to have a truth and to have a human, for there to be an encounter, for a spark of light to be able to burst forth. It doesn't work like that. The person has to be able or be ready to accept this light. By the way, in Arabic, the word Kabbalah comes from habiliyah, or acceptance, or the ability to accept. That's what it means, what the word means. If the neighbor has a flat tire, the flat tire is a clear truth. There are wires and metal sticking out. But he's not ready, because his driving experience doesn't let him realize how dangerous that tire is. But he might know it, but it's going to go in one ear and out the other. And one day he'll cause some damage because he wasn't ready to accept that truth. The idea is if you want today, the whole journey, the whole Kabbalistic journey is really about trying to become inwardly ready to accept the truth. But the problem we have today is that we have too much truth and not enough action. That's the problem. We're a bit anti-Kabbalistic because when you talk to people, they already know the truth, not ignorant of it. All right? And they know it completely. It's well integrated in their minds. It's well integrated there, but it doesn't change anything. It doesn't change anything in practice. You see, they won't embody it. They're challenged, they're tikkun. They won't go towards it. You see? They'll just take that part of cold light and then go around in circles like an insect in a lamp, you know? So I was saying, for example, and this is terrible, when you take people who are involved in toxic relationships, whether they are toxic, highly emotional relationships, I'm not necessarily talking about work, because with work we can have some emotion with work, but it's actually more of a money relationship that we have with work. So there are a lot of people, if they won the lottery, they would literally stop working the moment the news comes out, right? It's because they were there specifically for the money. So money is important because it actually allows you to finance your life, to feed your children, to have food, shelter, and essentials. But fundamentally, money, if you don't find it in this company, you find it in another one. I've quit plenty of companies. I didn't have any heartbreak. I even forgot they existed and they forgot about me. But the toxicity you can find in human relationships, that's the worst. That really is. And then once you're caught up in that toxicity of human relationships, there's another problem that comes along with it. It's, the bias. I'll tell you something. You get the impression, but when giving advice, you must be careful about one thing. You take the information, someone will give you some information, a friend, your brother, I don't know, someone on the bus, it doesn't matter. He asks you for advice and information. And what you're going to do is think about it, and you'll say, that's my solution. What you don't realize is that people don't always think rationally. They actually think in a way that's rational, but actually semi-rational. That means there are several levels, there are several layers. There's a first layer that's rational. Then we add what are called biases. A bias is like, once I'm done cooking, right, I've finished my soup, I add a secret ingredient to it. So the bias is what we call the secret ingredient. So the person will think, come to a result, and the result is temporary. They'll add the secret ingredient, and that's when the story truly ends. The issue with the secret ingredient or note, sometimes it's more powerful than logic or reasoning, you see? That's our big problem. Look, you take someone who's going to practice skiing. He arrives, he likes skiing, he's only heard good things about it and all that. Well, he just wants to put on his skis and start skiing with the help of an instructor. That's good. He falls, he laughs, all that. Now take someone else. I don't know, you take a girl and let's say you bring her to teach her how to ski. Except her ex crashed into a tree right in front of her and had to be airlifted. He was 10 days between life and death. Then he passed away, all right, in a ski assistant. You can imagine that she has a bias, that she has a very strong bias now towards skiing. So here, I gave you a case, a tough case. I said we saw someone in a coma against a tree, added the helicopter and more. That's a major scenario, right? But in everyday life, we have a lot of situations that cause biases, strong biases, weak biases. One of the biases that we have, that a lot of people have, is the sunk cost bias. So what is the sunk cost bias? Let me tell you a story. It tells a story. I had a friend, I lost touch with him. I don't know what happened to him. He had developed a clever betting system to win at the casino. There you go. He was sure that the system, I don't remember if it was for the tables roulette or something else, that it was a system that didn't hold up mathematically. He's wrong. The system ensures the casino always wins. I'm just clarifying, so we're on the same page. This is a responsible video. So he thought, through flawed reasoning, that he had found the logic or the technique or the most powerful betting system ever seen by humanity, and that he was going to bankrupt the casino. He takes 20,000 euros, which is all he had. If he sold, I don't know what. I'd rather tell you. I'd rather not tell you if he sold. But anyway, that's where it ends. I was saying that he takes it. So the thing, the money, the amount, and he goes to the casino and he starts to play. He plays. And then, well, it's 2 a.m. There, his martingale and sale put him at minus 13 or 14,000 euros. That means he had lost 2/3 of his money. So a third of the money is still significant because his account was empty when he took the money to go to the casino. He left the account empty. So I say 8,000 euros, 7,000 euros. It's not that bad when your account only has 12 euros 50. So just keep the money at your place. But the thing is, now we're getting into the sunk cost fallacy. So he says to himself, if I stop here at 2 a.m, I say, listen, guys, thank you. I toss the chip to the staff and I go home peacefully. Well, here I am. The loss is there. That's it. I miscalculated. No, he wants to stay because if he leaves, he loses the 12,000 euros. So he wants to continue. He wants to persist to try to get that money back. There are a lot of compulsive gamblers, by the way. And actually, compulsive gambling is just a mechanism we have in our heads. This same mechanism or bias appears in human relationships and all types of decisions, business, company, and life choices. All that. So I was saying, the guy, I imagine, no surprise, you get nothing if you guess what happened to him. Around 4 or 5 in the morning, he left the casino. He had lost everything this time. The 20,000 euros were gone, and he didn't even have enough to pay for the taxi. I don't even have enough to pay for the taxi. Those are really his own words, his words. He's the one who told me that. He said I didn't have enough for a taxi home at 5 in the morning. I think he found someone to help him. So as I was saying, people are often in this situation. When someone is in a toxic relationship, they fall into this bias. They fall into this sunk cost bias. That's just one bias. There are many. Our brain handles many concrete and abstract functions. Some of them we're aware of, others we're not. But they make it so our brain isn't a calculator. It's not a precise, sharp machine. And that's what makes it so. That's what makes us different. That's what makes us not robots. People repeat themselves all day. It's good, it's great, it's diversity. That's what I want to say. But at the same time, when we're not aware of these mechanisms, or when some of them, if you will, become too important at the expense of others, that's when we start to feel bad. So I'm telling you, with the sunk cost bias, someone has been in a toxic relationship for a long time and can't leave it. Yes, because now there's that bias. Because if they leave, they feel like they've wasted all their time. Up until now, they've wasted all their time, right? They've lost all the effort they put in. All the suffering was for nothing. I mean, at this point, the story, which is actually old, is starting to become defining. The person wants to persist. There's also something else. Another bias is the bias of wanting to prove, A lot of people want to prove things. They want to prove to themselves. They want to prove to those around them. I want to prove, for example, I'm with someone who mistreats me, but I want to prove my loyalty. I want to prove my love. And to prove this authenticity and, well, the nobility of my feelings, what I do is I keep going, I persist, I suffer, but I keep going. And actually, I'm not proving love or authenticity at all. I'm just testing my limits when it comes to humiliation. I'm just trying to prove I can endure humiliation, take hits and slaps, and withstand mistreatment. That's what I'm trying to prove. That's all. All right. So there's another bias, a mental bias. That was the bias of proving. There's another bias, which is we'll find this among women. You know, men and women both can suffer or be involved in toxic relationships, in romantic relationships. But you can also find women in particular. That's something specific to women, I would say. The woman, if you will, somewhere. If we look at her archetype, it's the archetype of creation. The woman is a creator. The woman, it's something extraordinary. As a man, you can't understand that. You see it. It's a little bit. Look, it's a little bit like when you see a Boeing 747 taking off and flying over your head. Yes, the laws of aerodynamics, you've read books, you've taken physics classes. blah, blah. Yes, we all got it. But there's something deep inside you that doesn't understand how it flies. How this object so heavy and huge is passing right above your head and is flying. You see, there's something that doesn't add up. So even worse than that, 1,000 times more. Now, it's when you take a woman to the hospital, okay, and she gives birth, and you realize that you have a human inside another human, okay, and that they're going to take it out, and it's there, and it's crying, and you don't even end up talking to each other, and all of that. It's something. I mean, yes, okay, I took biology classes, all those explanations and everything. Okay, I got it. There's a part of me that understood, but another part of me is like, what is this? Some kind of alien or what? It's still pretty extraordinary. As a guy, maybe due to my XY chromosomes, there are things I just can't understand. You see, there's this difference, there's this disconnect. There's a disconnect between logic, between knowledge and all that, and between emotions, between perception, between our primitive side. You see, there's something that's broken. That's what I've been telling you since the beginning of the video. You see what I mean? People who know but can't do it. Why? Because there's a disconnect. They know, yes, they know everything you tell them. You say something, yes, you know it. And so, well then, yeah, I know all that, but I can't go back. I can't turn around. You see, I can't because my emotions are blocking me. You see what I mean? And that shows us the limit of our reasoning. You know, the limit. There, we're with Kant, the critique of pure reason. You see what I mean? Kant shows the limit of reason, the limit of what we can know. But it's beyond that, actually. It's not even, we're not even in the critique of pure reason. We're caught in the gap between reason and its limits, qualities, and flaws. Everything you want and the action that can result from it, and emotion, because it's actually emotion that will drive the action. Look, I'll give you an example in politics or whatever, not just in politics, people in every aspect of life. People, they make decisions and then they take action. People never act, not based on what is, but based on what they think it is. You see what I mean? So I go through the green light, and it really is green. There's a congruence between what I think and what actually is. And so my action will be consistent with what I think, with reality and all of that. But many people run red lights. They'll crash into another vehicle while swearing that the light was green, when in fact the surveillance camera shows it was red. They're not lying. I'm not referring to the dishonest guy who ran the light and changed his story, but to the one who truly saw it that way. And that's the problem. We act based on our perceptions, not on what we actually know. You see, there's another layer, there's another phase, and in this phase, that's where all the dangers lie. So you see, it's very hard today to help people who are in toxic situations, even though we live in an age of over information. With light, actually, it's not even light. You feel like there are big spotlights, kind of like headlights shining on them, you know, or chasing them. People claim they want to chase the light, but that's not true. It's the light that's chasing you. You know, when you're on stage, you see stages. I worked in television for a while. And when you see in a big theater, a performance hall, well, sometimes you see them testing lights. They're spotlights. Because at the back of the room you have a big powerful spotlight, sometimes with metal plates and everything, to really define the light beam. And what happens is that the room is dark, pitch black. You have an actor, a dancer, or someone else, and then what you have is someone following them with the light. So sometimes it's not you who has to chase the light, but it's the light that chases you. But still, being bathed in the light, you're still freezing to death. You know what I mean? It's not simple, these things. What I've been trying to say since the start of the video is that it's not necessarily the knowledge that we're lacking today. We're missing something else. Maybe we're missing warmth. Maybe we're missing better management of our emotions. We're missing more action, less passivity. You see, that's it. There's no simple solution. You realize that I am there. I started with a video. I wasn't really sure. I knew what I wanted to tell you. But of course, the details, all that, the details, I put them together while I was talking to you. But there is no simple solution. We are like that woman who left for no reason. And how am I going to bring her back? Well, right now, I'm falling apart. And I know, and I see it, and I visualize it, and I'm aware, but I can't stop it. You see, I can't help it. Because sometimes we develop an addiction, you see? Sometimes we develop an addiction to pain. We develop an addiction to suffering. It can be that too. Hey, it's not simple. It's not like that, but you don't solve it. With dialectical reasoning, you're not going to get convinced the person. There you go. But it's more complicated than A plus B. Forget about that, okay? Anyway, my friends, thank you for watching this video. And then we'll see each other in the next one. See you very soon.